Love podcasts, hate nonsense. The PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Men are class, aren't they?
Yeah, we are. We are.
Fucking love the lads. Love the fellas.
Oh, I felt that.
Great clapping. Great clapping. Two sheets of notes this morning.
We do.
Today,
single-sided though. Single-sided.
Yeah, 100%. I hate a double-sided piece of paper, you know, for the purposes of referencing, because it's very easy to get lost in your sheets.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, you never want that to
But
happen.
you're always reading left to right. Whereas if it's double-sided, you don't know where you're starting.
Indeed, unless it's the holy month, in which case I read right to left.
Of course.
Busy day, Sean.
It has been a busy day. Busy day in Westminster.
Yeah.
And we're not going to talk about at all.
No, we're not. I mean, we'll do race riots. That'll be the bulk of the episode.
Clapping's really tired you out, hasn't it?
I'm out of breath, brother. No, do you know, actually, I'm getting my VO2 max back to where I want it to be.
Okay.
It's been a gradual process over the last year. Took a bit of a hit, but no, we're back above average, which is where we want to be.
Is that on your watch, or do you have like a special mask that tells you what you're...
Sorry, at home, I have a full breathing apparatus sat up and treadmill on once a month when I test my no, just the watch. The watch guesstimates it, so it's not accurate. But I guess if over the course of a year, if all the data points are inaccurate in the same way, you can ascertain trends in your fitness, right?
Sure.
You can be like, I'm on the up,
Yeah.
I'm on the down, etc. So that's what that's about. No, look, let's do. People might be thinking, why aren't you going to talk about the spending review? We are going to talk about the spending, or more specifically, I think actually just me.
Yeah.
I think just me.
That's going to be fun.
Talk about the spending review tomorrow because Ava's on holiday and Ed's on his way to Ballymena.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used that as an opportunity to go, no, Sean, you don't need to do the podcast with me tomorrow. Laura, you don't need to do the podcast with me tomorrow. Connor, you don't need to do the podcast with me tomorrow because this is
Connor would have been a good shout.
Yeah.
Maybe Connor and Tom.
Yeah, maybe. Or I could just talk.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So
he's been waiting, dear listener, for the last, year and a half to have this moment, and finally he has it. So an Ollie monologue is coming to you tomorrow.
So buckle up for that one. Buckle the hell up for that one.
Things like spending reviews are really tough to understand.
They take a little while.
It's my little brain.
I think there's you can do two things. You can either do it effectively as live, either live or straight afterwards, which is typically what we would do.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'd interview someone about it, which we are doing, Andrew Fisher. That'll be out tomorrow. But then I think you digest it, you absorb the depth of it, you know. She was speaking for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
Even though she does speak very slowly, there's still quite a lot in there.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to think about. And, what's a win, what's a loss, where can we be better.
Sure you've not missed anything as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to plagiarize a little bit.
Yeah, you need to be able to plagiarize somebody else's intelligent thoughts about it. So that takes time. So that'll be tomorrow morning. So we are aware the spending review happened. We're just not going to talk about it right now. One, because of the race riot. Multiple race riots, I guess. Continued race riot. Extended riot.
Well, they're on a tea break at the moment, aren't they? So,
but they'll be back at it tonight, one imagines. But we'll do 2 minutes on PMQs. Will we do a little brief PMQs bit and then we'll get on to the rioting?
Yeah.
Okay. Headline thoughts, Sean?
It was as boring as they usually are, but actually with the added... I guess they are boring when it comes to spending review or spring statement.
I was going to ask you to clarify whether you meant the non-event PMQs that always precedes the fiscal event, where the leader of the opposition asks questions about what's been trailed in the media about the spending review. The Prime Minister says, if only you would wait 20 minutes, be patient, my dear colleague, the Chancellor, will avail you of the answers. And that didn't happen to as great an extent today, but there was still a bit of it there.
Yeah.
And there was obviously planted questions about nuclear and...
Sorry, what?
Nuclear. Yeah. Nuclear.
A lot of nuclear in the chamber today.
It's a very common mispronunciation. It's one that I'm guilty of often.
Yeah. Happens to the best of us.
But I think it's an Americanism.
Nuclear.
Yeah. That's how they say it.
What does Homer call it? Where does Homer work?
He works in a power plant.
The Springfield. I'm sure he says nuclear.
Well, they're very intelligent.
Yeah.
Those writers.
Well, you would have to be.
Those voice actors. No, but it's
never
nuclear.
discussed, is it, that like Homer Simpson was a nuclear supervisor?
But isn't that the gag?
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know
his
about
job is the
that.
gag.
Maybe it's just scientific brain versus social brain.
Do you know what? Something that also doesn't get spoken about is the fact that for the same upgrading and rearming of our Trident missile program, that it's costing us about 3 billion or more than the Americans to do the same thing.
Because
Great question.
it's their nuclears.
Well, some might say that because the spending on those things is classified, that you can essentially lump bits of spending that you don't want people to know about.
Okay.
Which is the argument that Dominic Cummings and people in his orbit that also write Substacks have been saying about it for quite a period of time. And that essentially you just go, fantastic, it's all classified, so we can just lump, I don't know, this is speculation, the fact that perhaps, half of the submarine fleet isn't actually operational right now. We'll just, that's classified information, so no one needs to know the fact that actually half the submarine fleet isn't operational. We need to repair it because it's part of the classified nuclear program. So there you go, did it again.
Yeah,
nuclear. So that's possibly one explanation, but it's just a guess, on my behalf.
Well, yeah, that's fun.
Kemi, she was shaking.
Yeah,
she was shook.
It's not often Kier Stammer rattles someone to the point of shaking them.
She really was, though.
Yeah. Do you think
it was like this, wasn't it? Her hand was out.
It was really bad.
It was
like
visible.
It looked like something that a doctor should look at if it wasn't a high octane, high pressure situation like PMQs.
Yeah, I suppose and if it is an illness, then I wouldn't want to speak ill of her for having it. But I think it was nerves. I think it was an emotional. Like I get like that.
Yeah.
When you're nervous about public speaking or whatever.
I haven't noticed it before though.
But what I did notice was something that I did a public speaking workshop at one of my first jobs.
Right.
And the people in that workshop explained the importance of having a physical anchor. So you feel uncomfortable, you don't know what to do with your hands. It's like when you're practicing the speaking you have to do, you have an anchor, you have a baseline. It's like a posture or a pose that you always go back to.
Yeah.
If you don't know what to do, you're just there and you stay there. So typically it would be like feet shoulder width apart, hands together in front of you. You keep them there. That's you. This is your safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And
that
that
might
way,
come out.
Yeah, you can gesture,
but it always comes back.
It comes back.
Yeah,
this is your safe space. And as a result of that, obviously people can't see if you're shaking that well. You could be anything. But the thing that I noticed for her was when she was doing that, she immediately went back to this pose, which she quite often has when she's at the dispatch box, where she has one arm forward and she took the shaking hand and she placed it into the crook of her elbow.
Yeah.
And she held it there like that and was in a much more steady position. And I thought, it was a hunch again, but I thought that's why you stand at the dispatch box like that, because you can't see the shaking of the hand when it's there.
Did she come up with that pose when you were together at the public speaking event?
Yeah, sorry. It was for it was for prospective parliamentary candidates for the Conservative Party.
Yeah,
when I say it was my first job. Yeah, arguing about the economy. I don't know. It was like bit of a damp squib.
Yeah,
political cliche. Take that one for free.
It's one of them that it won't go down in the canon of all time best PMQs. But I think it runs along the same theme of recent ones where the questions seem like they're not designed to land in the first place. And the response is almost just as bad. But because Kier Stammer has the opportunity to slag off Kemi Badenoch or talk about the 22 billion or talk about out of ideas, or then what was that thing, the Matt Ford thing that you referenced?
I heard
as well.
Yeah, she said on the Matt Ford program that she rehearses getting furious.
Yeah,
and he said, she's done a good job this morning or something like that. Yeah. I didn't think it was a great burn. Didn't really land for me.
No.
They don't
often do.
Stammer said it, and then Reeves said it as well in the spending review about, I've seen how she says that she's trying to get better on the job, and they were using it as a rinse.
Yeah.
To essentially be like, you're not very good at this.
I think you should be aspiring to get better at something as time goes on.
Is that not just
yeah. That's just.
I was thinking. I don't know. It came across to me as like a little bit arrogant because it's like I think it's quite self-effacing, and to be able to admit public. I think it's something you should possibly be applauding. To be like, I am aware of my own faults, and I wish to get better at them.
Yeah,
it's an attitude that I think we should encourage in people. Rather than being like,
I am the best person for the job, and I will always be this good, and that's all you ever need from me.
Yeah, Kemi Badenoch doesn't think the sun shines out of our ass. How pathetic! Yeah. Struck me. But look, I mean, that's probably the extent of the analysis. Saw Sharicewood as well. You flagged there was a question there that maybe we'll use to pivot.
Yeah,
to Ballymena.
I mean, it was the only Ballymena related question today, so I felt it was apt.
It's a place for a segue. Yeah, I don't know what it was about the way Saoirse asked the question, but I did turn to you and say I felt like that was unionist coded, despite the fact that she's an Alliance MP. It was just something about it felt quite feverish.
Yeah,
in the way it was asked.
But it's also the kind of I guess for unionists in Westminster, they have this presentation that is there's the whole thing of the siege mentality of the unionists in the north and whatever it might be. And also she's an Alliance MP, so
the third way,
the Blairist party. But there is a way of presenting that I think is just vulnerability and fear, that I think that's what was the essence of how she was presenting herself during the question. It was I don't know how to best explain it, but I have this idea of looking at Stormont politics versus looking at Westminster politics. The attitude of unionist representatives are very different in the two.
Yeah.
It's our place in Stormont and it's
Daddy's place.
Yeah. Can I please have a little bit of chocolate, please?
Yeah.
Can I please fly the flag a little bit longer?
So the bonfire has to be 10 feet taller. Yeah.
Master Speaker, imagine my shock when Lawrence City Council knocked down Mr. Speaker.
That's good. You've been working on that.
I have.
Look, it's her constituency, isn't it? Lagan Valley.
Lagan Valley is
where it's happening. That's Ballymena.
No. North Antrim is Ballymena. Okay. Lagan Valley is Jeffrey Donaldson's former constituency.
Well, we'll fucking get onto him in a second. Look, I think maybe people might not be fully across what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I might just read some news reporting.
I like when you read.
Sure.
I just thought it would be vulnerable for a second.
Very good. We applaud that. You and Kemi, birds of a feather. Right. So this is a story courtesy of The Telegraph, not the Belfast Telegraph.
No. The Telegraph.
The Brit Telegraph.
This is a little taster of what you're in for in tomorrow's podcast.
An oration. 15 police officers were injured and 4 houses set alight in anti-migrant riots after 2 teenagers thought to be Romanian were charged with the sexual assault of a girl in Northern Ireland. 2 14-year-old boys appeared at a local court by video link on Monday, charged with attempted rape. The charges were read to them by a Romanian interpreter. Violence erupted in Ballymena, County Antrim, on Monday night after a peaceful vigil by hundreds of people had been held in the town centre. Jim Allister, the North Antrim MP, said Ballymena had been overburdened by unchecked migration, which was a source of, quote, past and future tensions. The victim's family condemned the riots, asking that justice be served, quote, in the correct manner, end quote. The family said that they were in, quote, no way involved or condone any trouble that happened, end quote, after the peaceful protest. The Prime Minister's official spokesman said, the disorder we saw in Ballymena is very concerning. Obviously, the reports of sexual assault in the area are extremely distressing, but there is no justification for attacks on police officers while they continue to protect local communities. After splitting from the vigil and setting up barricades in the Clonavon Terrace area of the town, Mass rioters threw petrol bombs, masonry, fireworks, and bricks at police over several hours. Several officers needed hospital treatment and 2 police vehicles were damaged. Police fired one rubber bullet baton round. That's a bit of a tongue twister, hitting a rioter. A 29-year-old man was arrested. Social media footage showed thugs punching through the windows of one home and setting fire to the curtains. One man shouted, "Pedo protectors," at the house. 4 houses were set ablaze and firefighters had to save 3 people. In one video, one woman was recorded saying, "If they're not local, let them fucking stay there." There are unsubstantiated claims online, including by the far-right activist Tommy Robinson, that the suspects lived in some of the targeted houses. Along Clyavon Terrace, 6 houses had their windows smashed, with 2 of them taped off after suffering significant fire damage. Those attacks are being treated as racially motivated hate crimes. So a couple of nights of disorder now, Sean. And we probably would expect it to continue. Well, I mean, you could probably say it might continue at least through the next couple of months because we're getting to the bonfire time, aren't we?
It's marching season, baby.
Yeah. So tensions are already slightly inflamed.
Before we get deep on it, one sentence in that article I found quite interesting how it was presented.
There's a sentence in the article that I also found interesting. Is it the same one?
One man shouted "pedo protectors" at the house. That, as you were reading it, felt to me as though the house, he was talking to the house itself.
Okay.
What's your sentence?
Right. So that sentence was also interesting to me, but it's not the one I was thinking of. And it's also interesting to me because implied in it, right? So if you're a paedophile, right, you're an adult that is sexually abusing children. The implication is that the 2 14-year-olds who are suspected of a crime, that they're not being honest about their age is the implication, which is like a trope, right? That people arrive in the UK and Ireland, or just on the island of Ireland, although I've seen some of the GB News reporting talking about how migrants in Ireland are moving north and crossing the border and resettling in Belfast. But it's a common trope, right, that it's like these people aren't the age they say they are, and they're infiltrating schools and they're terrorizing school children as a result. So that is what I think that insult is getting at.
No.
But the line that struck me actually was the quote from Stammer's Spox, which was, obviously the reports of sexual assault in the area are extremely distressing.
I've got that.
But there is no justification for attacks on police officers while they continue to protect local communities.
There were 6 houses firebombed.
Yeah. And it's like, is there no justification for race rioting?
Yeah.
Is there no justification for, like, I saw one of the lads that got firebombed is Filipino.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he's kind of like, if you've just gone, there is the guy who lives here isn't white, so let's burn his car out while his wife and children are inside the house. You're a racist.
Yeah.
You're a racist, pal. I mean, you're a racist. Even if he was
not a non-Sunter.
No, you're
not a non-Sunter.
You're not a noble non-Santa, brother. You're not a vigilante.
Yeah.
You're a racist.
Yeah.
And to be fair, you know, even if he was Romanian, you'd still be a racist.
Yeah.
But it's just an extra layer. It's just an extra layer of ignorance, which, you know, puts a finer point on it.
Yeah, I think had Stammer said anything on Monday, or is it just today that
this is the only, he may well have done, but these are the only remarks that I've seen. And I mean, I can quote what he said in response to Saoirse Eastwood in the chamber. He said, "Can I start with the important point she makes about Ballymena? And I utterly condemn the violence that we've seen overnight in Ballymena and in other parts of Northern Ireland, including against PSNI officers." It has been
reported actually that last night there were riots elsewhere.
Oh, really?
Fermanagh, Belfast.
In Fermanagh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so one suspects then that it's going to probably grow and grow, and that it's kind of not quite peaked.
It's the way these things usually happen around this time of year, is kind of to disperse the police Land Rovers to different places, so it is an easier fight and more people get away with the vandalism of police equipment.
Yeah. Look, I think, okay, so it's worth, again, there is a degree of cultural, political, and just full stop ignorance about the north of Ireland on mainland Britain. And I think there are people who don't appreciate or fully understand that there are places within the United Kingdom, and I mean the nation state, including Northern Ireland, where the police force cannot go without being in armoured cars.
Yep.
You know, in Derry, in the Bogside, it would be unwise for an officer of the PSNI to walk down the street alone in uniform.
There is a theory that the existence of the armoured police Land Rover is a trigger for people who are already in a state of hysteria around a certain topic. I'm not saying that this is necessarily the case here, but in times gone by when there are riots, whether it's in Derry, Belfast, Ballymena, it's normally the case that petrol bombs start going off when the police Land Rover arrives and not before. And the theory goes that it's the attempt by the police to accelerate the situation, so more police presence heightens the situation.
Be the same argument
the news
as what's happening in LA, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it was certainly not the case here. There were houses being petrol bombed and bricked and whatever.
Look, there are parts of the UK where that's the case. There's parts of the UK where effigies of British soldiers are placed on top of bonfires and burnt. There are places where effigies of recently killed or recently deceased people from the opposing community are placed on bonfires and burned. And when I say bonfires, I'm talking like 6-story high piles of pallets. Like it's not bonfire night, right? It's literally like
culture night.
Yeah, it's culture night, right? And I've reported from them. You've reported from them.
That's right. You did the internment bonfires, didn't you?
Yeah, it was more of a Soldier F bonfire.
Right.
Was what it was.
Okay.
It was a good old time. But like for what it's worth, that was in the middle of Derry. I'm clearly an English bloke, and whilst these things can look intimidating, it was fine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like people actually wanted to talk to me about like what was happening, the politics behind it. Bloody Sunday. Yeah, like it goes on. And it's not like, oh my God, you're English, you're in danger, please, like you have to get out. It's not like that at all. I think probably if I was a loyalist from Belfast, possibly different situation, but I'm not. And there is a tendency on the mainland to basically blot that out from our consciousness, both political or otherwise, and not really engage with what's going on over there. And I think it's and we were talking about this over the last couple of days, that I think it's a mistake. It would be a mistake, and it would be politically naive to chalk this up as basically like the Irish are at it again.
Yeah.
To coin a phrase.
Yeah. An oft-cited phrase.
I think we'll get into why that's the case. But I mean, what do you read into what's happening right now and how it connects to this typical season of burning things and kicking off with the police, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously there is a family that has gone through a serious amount of trauma, and they're referenced in that article. And their grief and pain is being used in a way to facilitate this kind of abhorrent violence. But when it comes to this season in the north, it's one of the. You remember when it came to Southport last year, and a lot of people were talking about the like tongue-in-cheek comment was, well, the football's over. People are looking for something to do. It is not, it's not uncommon for this kind of event to happen in the North as a response to things that are more trivial than what happened. I'm not saying that everyone there is doing this as a response to what happened to the girl, but for the long, these kinds of things, as you said, it's like the Irish are at it again. But I think the different flavor this time is the presence of people like Tommy Robinson, the coverage on GB News, the ecosystem that is localized in Northern Ireland in this situation has been nationalized in the online space, but also in mainstream media, i.e. GB News, Telegraph, whatever. But there's also a real strange unity across whether, I mean, I'm not a unionist, I'm not from the North either, but there is this kind of this lizard brain in all Irish people that at the end of the day, they're English and we're different from them. So we hate each other. Of course we hate each other, but they're the ones that we all kind of hate the most, you know.
You think a unionist feels that way?
Little bit. Well, I mean, the manifestation of the British state at the moment is those Land Rovers. You know, you do not, if you respected Britain and you respected every facet of your loyal tradition, you'd salute those boys as they came down the street and you'd disperse straight away, you know. I mean, I'm sure if Ed was sat here, he'd attest to the same, that a Scottish unionist would have some, I'm not saying that it's an equal kind of othering of English people, but there is an othering of English people present. But I think with things like this, it's different, where we've now reached a point where certain sets of English, Northern Irish society have all united around the same racist banner, that we can put our differences aside for now and we can all get behind this one cause, which is get them out. And I mean, you see it in the video, some of the videos you mentioned, the Filipino family earlier on. There was one other video from a house that wasn't even on the street that the Land Rovers were on, where someone had firebombed a gas house next door, and fairly certainly at some point, had the services not come, the whole block was going to blow up. There was a Pakistani family inside the house, and that was what you could imagine the reason why the house next door was firebombed. And the bizarre nature of it all was that there were people outside who were either spectators or involved in what had happened before the video started recording, banging down the door to get the people out. But the commentators behind the camera were also talking about how there was a deservedness to it, of that, we're helping them out now, but they've done this themselves. There's just this weird warped sense of it all. But no, I do think that it's very different now compared to what it has been in summers gone by. And the trigger is something that I think that's the crucial point, is that the English people that are on the side and talking about legitimate concerns are people that replicate that kind of behavior in England.
Yeah.
You know,
look, so I think it's worth passing out here, and in relation to other sort of political movements, that there's a peaceful vigil, and then essentially part of the playbook of political extremists is to co-opt causes that would otherwise be peaceful and then use them to agitate. That's part of what's going on here. So you have elements of the far right. You also have elements of just, for want of a better word, just thuggery.
Yeah,
that it is people who are literally just turning up for the chaos. They're turning up to throw a brick at a police car and run off and never be seen again. They don't have any political motivation behind it. It is just gas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Then there's the far right who co-opt these movements, and I think it's worth saying, and I alluded to it earlier, that if you've chosen this instance of a sexual assault
Mm-hmm.
to riot and to quote unquote protest, and you all of a sudden I really, really care about violence against women and girls when quite a lot of women and girls have been attacked and abused by white Irish guys.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't do it then, but you're doing it now, you are quite literally a racist.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to not there's an active court case going on. The suspects are suspects. It's alleged what they've done is I'm not impugning guilt either way. But like a very simple and quick Google search turns up cases in the recent history of the area. You can look at May 2023. Finley Kennedy, 23-year-old man is accused of attempted rape and a second charge of a sexual assault of the same female. Did you riot?
Mm-hmm.
May 2010, Ballymena councillor William Wilkinson, guilty of rape. Did you riot?
Mm-hmm.
And that's before we start having a conversation about Jeffrey Donaldson, right? Sir Jeffrey Donaldson, 62, who's accused of 18 offences, including 1 count of rape. Lady Donaldson, 59, faces 5 charges relating to aiding and abetting. The offences were allegedly committed between 1985 and 2008. They both deny those charges. So there's an active criminal investigation going on, as is the case in this instance now.
Mm-hmm.
Did you riot then?
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't, and you're rioting now,
why are you rioting now?
You don't care about violence against women and girls. You're a racist.
Mm-hmm.
That is what it is about.
And then particularly with Northern Ireland as well. I mean, there is such a proliferation of women's refuges and women's centres that are kind of these cross-community led things. Like one that strikes to mind is the Shankill Women's Centre, famously non-sectarian. It's ingrained almost into post-conflict society in the North that violence against women and girls is so pervasive that it's almost normal that the existence of all of these environments for like refuges for women or whatever, that it's so normalized within Northern Irish society that you extrapolate it out, and that obviously leads to there is a problem with how men treat women in Northern Ireland. I think the percentage is something like 85% of what was the number?
We've got the stats here. It's 73% of women who experienced sexual assault knew the perpetrator. In Northern Ireland, 85% knew their perpetrator. Mm-hmm. 98% of women in Northern Ireland have experienced at least one form of abuse in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. 45% were assaulted by a partner or ex-partner. Mm-hmm. That's the hard data, which is worth pausing and reflecting on. And look, these guys are playing a dangerous game, right? These guys who want to say, oh yeah, well, these 2 Romanian lads are actually suspected of doing this sexual assault, so we're going to go out and we're going to enforce social justice against the Romanians, basically drawing a conclusion before legal proceedings have even really begun, drawing a conclusion about an entire group of people. Well, boys, I'd be very, very careful about doing that, because if you want to dig into the data, it would just appear that men are the problem. Sorry, self-righteously, punching themselves in the face. And it's like, I'm sure if I stood in front of you, Mr. far-right agitator, and told you that men are the problem, you would have a ginormous problem and say, you're prejudiced, you discriminate against me based on the behaviour of an individual that doesn't represent the whole. Big man, I implore you to engage with your own logic, but perhaps appeals to rationality aren't that sensible in this instance.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's even, I think Jim Allister was referenced in that Telegraph article, but he's been on the radio. Jim Allister is the
TUV
MP
for North Antrim.
Yes, so the constituency that Ballymena is in. TUV, quite interestingly, are what would be classified as the Reform UK branch in Northern Ireland. Also interestingly, during the election last year, Nigel Farage was endorsing the DUP because he liked Ian Paisley Jr. and had to be told by a journalist that the sister party in the north is actually the TUV.
Yeah,
and Jim Allister is who you should be supporting.
Which is explicitly, like a right-wing challenger and splinter from the DUP, right?
Yeah. They just get further and further right. It was once the UUP, then became the DUP, and now the DUP are not right enough.
I think your point about the sort of the information ecosystem that stretches across both, transcends borders, right? That essentially the mistake, the politically naive thing to do would be to discount this and say this is an Irish thing. Right? It's cultural. This is what they get up to. Don't get involved, boys.
Prime Minister, how do we deal with the Irish question?
Home rule, brother. Look, that would be a ginormous mistake because I think I've said this on the pod yet, but I've been yammering on to you about it for the last couple of weeks about how I feel like that the current political moment is far more febrile than Westminster politics, national media political discourse gives any credit to. And actually, you probably only have a semblance of it if you're watching GB News, which is that it's essentially a powder keg and it is one horrific story away from exploding. And that could be from genuinely any angle. I think some type of, hard right Israeli attacks a Muslim. I think the pro-Palestine marches take on a very different and far more aggressive flavor than they have done so far. I think, and I think you very quickly see some ugly scenes at the Israeli embassy. Conversely, and you flip that one on its head, I'd expect the same thing in return. Then you get to this whole sort of far right spectrum of potential violence that clearly is the territory we're getting into here, which post-Liverpool attack, not attack, sorry, that's definitely the wrong word to use. Post the Liverpool incident, what a lot of people were making out to be an attack when it first happened and transpires the guy was like a middle-aged white guy. The police release his ethnic information, the understanding being so as to prevent misinformation about his identity spreading for fear of a loss of public order and civil unrest.
And now you've got to do that every time.
And now you have to do it every time. And so it's getting fed out. And it's like, these two 14-year-old boys, the charges were read to them by a Romanian interpreter. And the community in Ballymena already will have known the ethnic identity of the suspects. But nonetheless, it's now out there. And because of our increasingly atomized, lonely society in which there are the things that used to bind us together, whether they were third spaces, whether they were solid schools that weren't literally falling down because the concrete in them is broken, all of these things have atrophied. And now you're at a point where the information ecosystem, which those people in Ballymena are consuming, and people in Southport are consuming, people in Telford are consuming, pick your place, it is all the same. It's Telegram channels, it's Tommy Robinson's 1 million followers on X. And so just at your peril, think that's a problem in Ballymena and it's not here. I mean, I don't think people have political memory short enough to have disregarded what happened in Southport and the rest of the United Kingdom in the aftermath of that. But I really do fear, from a combination of angles, whether it's from like a right-wing perspective that the police losing control of the streets, or from a left-wing perspective that the far right are sort of like actively conducting race riots. I really believe the political situation actually to be quite fraught on a street level.
Well, I mean, even if there was a scenario where we were saying earlier on that this has the potential to go on for a lot longer than a weekend, if a similar incident happens over here, that has the potential for everything to just kick off. It doesn't have to be, as you were saying there, about whether it was a question of an Israeli attack or whatever. The instances like this, I was just thinking about it when you were speaking there, of how the right tend to mobilize ordinarily, and how things like, you see how Tommy Robinson disseminates what's happening in the north. You see how it gets latched on by just general users of social media in the UK, general users of Telegram in the UK. That's not how these guys mobilize. And I think that might endear them even further to movements like the English far right, where something like this happens and it's like knocking on everyone's door on your way to the event. You know, there's something of a Dear Britain, you know, to it, of like, remember when you knocked for your mate, you know. There's something so much more visceral than just being, I mean, it is a demonstration of hate, but the way communities mobilize against the police, or again in this instance against brown people, is harking back to a way that people met and associated.
Do you remember when we used to race riot the old way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just go knock on Timmy's door and fucking, yeah.
Because it's such a common thing in Ulster to see a fleet of police cars coming down the way and know that you've got a night out on your hands. You know, that this is how people operate. Yes, it's been happening since Monday or Sunday, but it's only in the last 2 nights, I think, that the Land Rovers have rolled in. Before that, it's just pure chaos, pure violence, pure hate, racism, whatever. But now you're almost, the way this happens now is that the people who have been instigating violence against the police and against the residents of these communities are now hoping that there's going to be a van out the next day, so they then have another night of chaos, another night on the rip, and it's just going to continue to feed the cycle over here, which is the match, is the powder keg.
Look, it's worth clarifying as well, you know, when we're talking about this, we're not saying that anyone who wishes immigration to be lower in Northern Ireland is a racist. We're not saying that the people that were holding a peaceful vigil about women and girls are on the far right. What we're saying is when you throw a firebomb at a Filipino man's house, you're very definitely a racist. And that's an important distinction to make. Look, you've done a timely and appropriate piece about the rise of the Irish far right and what's going on with immigration and the provision of public services, which is live on the PoliticsJOE YouTube channel. I'd encourage everyone to watch it if they want to get a better understanding of what's going on. The headline for which is
Explained: Immigration and the Rise of the Irish Far Right.
There you go. Hit it up. It reminded me, actually, I'm not going to say that because what I've watched is actually not in the public domain yet. But I
know what it is.
Yeah, let me tell you, there's a TV series coming that touches on some of this stuff, and it's going to be well worth your time. I'm going to go and meet the man that made it for a drink now, and hopefully convince him to give us an extended interview about it. But that's all I can say.
Inshallah, he does.
Inshallah. Seán Hickey, time is up. I do need to depart the studio.
That's okay, Ollie.
A pleasure to pod with you about this very important but depressing subject.
The pleasure was all mine, sir. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. See you lot on the flippy. Goodbye.